How a street kid's heroic act stopped a coup and saved President Ibrahim Traoré. As the evening sun dipped beneath the horizon, the mood inside the presidential palace was electric with tension. President Ibrahim Traoré knew the stakes were high tonight. He was about to walk into the very heart of a conspiracy that could cost him his life. The time had come for the secret council meeting. The room was calm, meticulously arranged, with chairs in their perfect positions around the polished wooden table. The air smelled of expensive tea and freshly pressed suits, but beneath the surface the storm was brewing. Ibrahim walked in with a calm demeanor, his guards flanking him discreetly in the shadows. His heart, however, was racing. He knew that among the familiar faces in the room, some were no longer allies but traitors plotting his demise. As he took his seat at the table, he scanned the room, trying to read the faces of the men he had once trusted with the future of his country. The Minister of Defense, a man he had worked side by side with, sat with a calm smile at the far end of the table, sipping his tea. But Ibrahim's mind was far from calm. His gaze locked onto the man, the same voice he had heard in the recording earlier, the voice that had conspired against him. Yet Ibrahim had to stay composed. His instincts told him that if he made any move now, if he showed even the slightest sign of suspicion, it could be the end. The traitors would scatter and he would be vulnerable, exposed. So he played the part, smiling, nodding, engaging in casual conversation with the ministers. But all the while his mind raced, analyzing every gesture, every glance. Was it the man scratching his neck too often? Or the one constantly checking his watch? Was it the man who hadn't touched his tea? Or was it the one who kept shifting in his seat? Ibrahim's ears were also listening intently. Under the surface of polite chatter, the palace had become a battlefield. The weight of the moment pressed heavily on his chest. He knew that the fate of his presidency, and perhaps even his life, hung on what would happen in this room tonight. The traitors had carefully planned their attack, and Ibrahim had to act swiftly, but with precision. He couldn't let them get away. Not now, not when he was so close to uncovering the truth. The minutes seemed to drag on like hours. Ibrahim's mind began to race through plans, contingencies, what-ifs, and worst-case scenarios. What if the traitors had allies in the security detail? What if someone had already tipped them off? The stakes were higher than ever. He had to remain calm and wait for the right moment, the moment when he could strike back, when the shadows of treachery would finally be brought to light. As the conversation continued, Ibrahim's mind remained focused on the task at hand. He had come here to confront his enemies, but he couldn't reveal his knowledge just yet. The enemy was still at large, and Ibrahim knew better than to act too soon. Every word, every action would have to be calculated. He had to stay a step ahead of them, even if it meant pretending to trust the very men who sought to betray him. The final showdown was approaching, and Ibrahim wasn't about to let it end in the enemy's favor. It was a regular day in the heart of Ouagadougou's bustling market, a place filled with the vibrant hum of daily life, the chatter of vendors, and the smells of fresh produce and grilled meats. President Ibrahim Traoré, in an unusual move, was walking through the market in simple, unremarkable clothes. No sharp suit, no grand entourage, just a plain white shirt, brown trousers, and a cap pulled low over his eyes. He moved through the crowd unnoticed, a man lost in the sea of ordinary citizens. Ibrahim had felt increasingly disconnected from the people he led. His advisors reassured him that everything was fine, that the country was stable, and that people were happy with his leadership. But Ibrahim didn't feel it. His heart told him something was wrong, and he couldn't ignore the nagging sense that he wasn't hearing the full truth. So, he had decided to step out of the palace, away from the carefully crafted speeches and reports, and see the reality with his own eyes. His wife had warned him that good men often had many enemies, but Ibrahim was determined. He had kissed her forehead, reassuring her, "Don't worry, I'll be back before sunset." Little did he know this day would change everything. As he walked deeper into the market, Ibrahim overheard snippets of conversation from the people around him. Nothing unusual, just the normal flow of life. But then, the sharp crackle of a radio cut through the air, carrying with it an urgent message that froze him in his tracks. A young boy, no older than 12, was standing on a makeshift podium made of an old metal box. His radio was held together with string and plastic, but it worked. The boy was shouting into the crowd, his voice amplified by the crackling speaker. "Breaking news," he shouted, his voice filled with urgency. "Danger in the palace. Traitors are planning to kill President Traoré tonight." The words hit Ibrahim like a lightning strike. He couldn't believe it. Was this some kind of joke? Who would make such a bold claim? The crowd around him seemed divided, some laughing it off, others tossing coins into the boy's cup, thinking it was just another street performance. But Ibrahim's heart began to race. Something about the boy's voice, the gravity of what he was saying, made him take notice. Pushing through the crowd, Ibrahim approached the boy. He had to know more. "Hey, where did you hear that news?" he asked, trying to sound casual, though his pulse quickened with each passing second. The boy glanced up at Ibrahim, seemingly confused. "Who wants to know?" he asked, not recognizing the president standing in front of him. "I just like news," Ibrahim replied smoothly, trying to blend in. "I've never heard anything like this before. Is it a joke?" The boy shook his head, his expression turning serious. "It's not a joke, uncle," he said, his voice steady and confident. "I heard it on my shortwave radio last night. Some men were talking in codes. I listened carefully. They said, 'Tonight is the night,' and they said the president's name." He leaned closer to Ibrahim. "I swear I heard it." Ibrahim's mind raced as the boy spoke. This wasn't a random street kid making up stories. The boy had a purpose, and Ibrahim could hear the truth in his words. The president's pulse quickened as he realized just how close the danger was. He had to act fast. "I need to hear more," Ibrahim said, his voice calm but urgent. The boy nodded, pulling out an old recorder from his pocket. It was scratched, battered, and ancient, but it still worked. The boy pressed play, and a low static filled the air before a voice came through clearly. "We must be done with him before morning. Tonight, when he meets with the council, we will take control. The guards will be ours." Ibrahim's stomach churned as the realization set in. The plot was real. The words on that recording matched the warning the boy had given. He wasn't just overhearing rumors. This was a plan in motion, and he was its target. The president turned to the boy, his heart heavy with disbelief and gratitude. "Do you know who these men are?" Ibrahim asked, hoping for more information. The boy looked up at him with wide eyes. "I don't know their names, but I know where the signal came from," he said confidently. "I traced the frequency. I've been playing with radio since I was 7. My father was a soldier, but he died when I was little. Now I live on the street, but I know these things. I know how to listen." The boy's words echoed in Ibrahim's ears. He had just uncovered the most critical piece of information the president could ever hope to find. This was no ordinary street kid. This was a brave young man who had, in his own quiet way, just saved Ibrahim's life. Ibrahim took a deep breath. His fate, and perhaps the fate of his country, rested on what happened next. He had to take the boy with him. He had to act fast. Before we continue with this epic story, we have a small but exciting request. We're on a mission to hit 1,000 subscribers, and we can't do it without you. Your support means the world to us, so please hit that subscribe button to help us make this dream a reality. If you're loving Ibrahim's journey, drop a red heart emoji in the comments to show some love. If not, leave a 1 and tell us what you think. Your feedback matters. And trust us, don't skip ahead. We've got a special gift waiting for you at the end, and you won't want to miss it. Now let's get back to the thrilling conclusion of the story. The moment Ibrahim heard the boy's voice crackle through the static of the broken radio, his world shifted. Standing in the midst of the busy market, with people haggling for vegetables and fish, the president of Burkina Faso felt an icy chill run down his spine. The words coming from the young street boy, speaking with the broken, patched-together radio, were like a warning bell that echoed in the pit of his stomach. Breaking news. Danger in the palace. Traitors are planning to kill President Traoré tonight. At first, the announcement seemed unbelievable. Was it a joke? A prank from an attention-seeking street kid? But then Ibrahim's intuition took over, and his heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just some random claim. There was something real beneath it. He pushed through the crowd, keeping his cover as a curious man just listening to the news. He approached the boy, whose ragged appearance couldn't hide the intense focus in his eyes. "Hey, where did you hear that news?" Ibrahim asked, trying to keep his voice calm, but his mind was already racing. He had to be sure. The boy, a child no older than 12, looked up at him with wide eyes as if surprised by the question. "Who wants to know?" he asked, his voice cautious but not afraid. "I just like news," Ibrahim replied smoothly, trying to seem unassuming. "I've never heard anything like that before. Is it a joke?" The boy's face turned serious in an instant, as though he knew something was much bigger than what anyone else understood. "It's not a joke, uncle," he said, stepping down from the metal box where he had been broadcasting his news. "I heard it last night on my radio. Some men were talking in codes, but I listened carefully. They said, 'Tonight is the night,' and they mentioned the president's name. I swear I heard it myself." Ibrahim's heart raced. This wasn't just a random threat. it was something more. The boy wasn't just a street urchin spinning stories. He had been paying attention, and somehow he had uncovered something no one else had. The president's mind was already working on overdrive, calculating the significance of this moment. The boy had been listening to a coded conversation, a plot that was unfolding right under his nose, and now he had the proof. "I recorded it," the boy continued, holding up a battered old tape recorder. "You want to hear it?" Ibrahim nodded, his hands suddenly cold. His pulse quickened. This could be it. This could be the break he needed to stop the conspiracy before it went any further. The boy, with trembling hands, pressed play on the recorder. The static cleared, and the voices came through faint but unmistakable. Ibrahim's blood ran cold as he recognized the words. "They must be gone before morning. Tonight, when he meets the council, we have people inside. The guards will be ours," the voice on the tape said. The hairs on the back of Ibrahim's neck stood on end. He recognized the voice. It was one of his own ministers, someone he had trusted, someone who had been by his side just yesterday. His mind raced as he turned to the boy. "Do you know who these people are?" he asked urgently. The boy shook his head. "No, but I know where the signal came from. I traced the frequency. I've been playing with radio since I was 7. My father was a soldier, but he died when I was little. Now I live on the street, but radios are my world." Ibrahim's stomach dropped. The boy, this poor homeless street child, had just saved his life. And not just his life, but the future of the nation itself. Ibrahim realized in that moment that this boy was his unexpected hero, someone who had risked everything for the truth. The president's mind flashed back to the conversation with his wife that morning when he said, "I want to see with my own eyes." Now, he had seen with his own eyes and heard with his own ears the treachery that lurked in the shadows. This was no longer a coincidence. This was destiny. This was a moment that would change everything. The air in the market had shifted. The crowd continued to bustle around, unaware of the dramatic turn of events unfolding just a few feet away. Ibrahim stood there, his mind racing as the boy, Ismail, finished playing the recording. The words still echoed in his head, each sentence heavier than the last. "Tonight is the night. We have people inside. The guards will be ours." The voices on the tape were unmistakable. One of them was from his own cabinet, a trusted ally. This wasn't just a rumor or a fabrication. It was a plan, and the president was its target. But the question now was how to act. Ibrahim glanced at the boy, who seemed to be waiting for his reaction. This wasn't just a street kid with a broken radio. This was someone who had just saved his life. He could see the fear in the boy's eyes, but also something more. A fierce determination, a sense of duty to his country, even though he had nothing to his name but a handful of tattered clothes and a single working radio. "I need you to come with me," Ibrahim said quietly, his voice steady but urgent. He could feel the weight of the moment, the enormity of the decision. If this boy was telling the truth, and Ibrahim had no reason to doubt him, then he was the key to stopping the coup before it even began. The boy looked at him wide-eyed. "Why should I come with you? What do I have to do with any of this?" Ibrahim took a deep breath. "Because I believe you," he said simply. "You've heard what's going to happen, and you've already helped me. Now, I need your help again." Ismail blinked in disbelief. "You're the president?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. Ibrahim smiled softly, though his mind was far from calm. He removed his cap and leaned closer to the boy. "Yes, I am. But you need to keep your voice down. Not here. Not yet." The boy's eyes went wide and he took a step back. His gaze flickered from the president to the recorder in his hand. "You're really him? The president?" "Yes, I am," Ibrahim said quietly, trying to reassure the boy. "And you've done more for this country today than most of the people in this room ever will." Ismail seemed to shrink back slightly, his confidence faltering as he processed the situation. Ibrahim's words felt surreal, especially considering where he had come from, the streets, the dirt, the makeshift homes. And now here he was speaking to the man who led an entire nation. Ibrahim could see the boy's disbelief written clearly on his face. "It's all right," Ibrahim continued, placing a hand on Ismail's shoulder. "You did nothing wrong. You may have just saved my life." With those words, Ismail seemed to relax slightly, though his wide eyes still conveyed a sense of shock. The moment was heavy, filled with the unspoken understanding that the stakes were higher than either of them could have anticipated. "I need to get you to safety," Ibrahim said, glancing over his shoulder. "Let's go now." As they started to move through the market, Ibrahim kept his head down, trying to avoid drawing attention. The city around them continued as usual, but Ibrahim's thoughts were miles away, focused on the task at hand. He had just found an unexpected ally in a street kid, and now he had to act fast before it was too late. The streets of Ouagadougou felt eerily quiet as Ibrahim, Ismail, and his two trusted guards moved quickly through the back alleys, trying to blend in. The city was no longer just a place for trade and bustle, it was now a battleground for survival. Ibrahim's heart raced not because of the streets or the people around him, but because he knew that danger was closing in fast. The coup plotters were among those closest to him and the time was running out. As they made their way back to the palace, Ibrahim couldn't help but reflect on his decision. The morning had started with a simple desire to connect with the people, something he hadn't done in months. He had needed to feel what they felt, to hear what they said when they didn't know he was listening. Now that decision had led him here, on a dark path filled with betrayal and fear. But it had also led him to Ismail, a boy from the streets who had uncovered the conspiracy that could have cost him everything. The sound of their footsteps echoed in the quiet alleys. Ibrahim glanced over at the boy who was still staring out the window of the black SUV. Ismail had never seen anything like this before. Luxury cars, security guards, the darkened streets of the city they were speeding through, but he was holding it together better than Ibrahim had expected. In a way, the boy was a reflection of the country itself. Underdogs who had been pushed aside for too long, but now had the power to change their own fate. "We'll be safe at the palace," Ibrahim said, breaking the silence. He tried to reassure the boy, though his own nerves were on edge. "You're with me now. Nothing will happen to you." Ismail nodded slowly, still processing everything. He didn't know what was going to happen next, but the gravity of the situation was settling in. Ibrahim had just revealed his identity, and now he was taking the boy into the heart of the storm. The meeting ahead wasn't just any council meeting, it was the moment when everything would either fall apart or be saved. As the convoy sped through the streets, Ibrahim's mind raced. He needed to get to his chief of intelligence, Commander Coup. Only a select few could be trusted with the information they had gathered. They would need to plan the next move carefully. Too many lives were at stake, including the life of the boy beside him. As the black SUV turned into the gates of the presidential palace, Ibrahim's heart pounded in his chest. The palace, once a symbol of power and security, now felt like a fortress surrounded by treachery. It was here, behind these walls, that the men who had once sworn an oath to protect the nation were now conspiring to tear it apart. The recording, the warning from Ismail, it all pointed to one horrifying truth: the coup was real and it was happening tonight. Ibrahim led Ismail through the corridors of the palace, his mind focused on the danger that was now closer than ever. The meeting with the ministers was set to begin soon, and it would be a meeting that could either solidify his position or end it altogether. Every moment that passed felt like a countdown to disaster. Inside the palace's secure study, Ibrahim met with Commander Coup, his trusted right-hand man. The atmosphere was tense as they listened to the recording again, the voices unmistakable in their intent. Ibrahim's blood ran cold as he recognized one of the voices. It was the Minister of Defense, a man who had been by his side for years. He had once shared meals with Ibrahim, laughed with him, and made plans for the future of Burkina Faso. Now he was part of the conspiracy to assassinate the president. "This is bigger than I thought," Ibrahim said, his voice heavy with disbelief. "We can't move too quickly. If we alert them now, they'll scatter. We need to catch them in the act at the meeting." Coup nodded in agreement. "We'll be ready, sir. But we need to be cautious. If they suspect anything, it could be too late." Ibrahim stood by the window, looking out at the sprawling palace grounds. "We need to make sure the boy is safe. He's done more for this country than anyone could have expected." He turned to Coup. "Don't let him out of your sight." As the minutes ticked by, the weight of the situation pressed harder on Ibrahim's shoulders. He was about to walk into a meeting with men he had trusted completely, men who were plotting his death. But he couldn't let fear rule him. He had to stay focused, keep his composure, and wait for the right moment to strike. This wasn't just about his survival, it was about saving the country from falling into chaos. The time for talk was over. It was time for action. The council room was eerily calm as Ibrahim entered, his mind buzzing with the weight of the situation. The long mahogany table was set, the ministers already seated, their faces a mix of indifference and politeness as they greeted him. Ibrahim's eyes darted around the room, each face registering in his mind. There, at the far end of the table, sat the Minister of Defense. His betrayer, the man who had sworn an oath to protect him and now stood as a part of the plot to end his life. Ibrahim kept his composure, forcing a warm smile as he greeted the ministers, shaking hands and taking his seat. But beneath his calm exterior, his mind was working on overdrive. The voices on the recording, the whispered conspiracies, the boy's warning, all of it was coming to fruition tonight. Ibrahim knew that he had to play along, pretend to be unaware of the danger lurking in the room. Every action, every word spoken tonight, would determine whether or not he would walk out of this room alive. As the meeting commenced, Ibrahim's eyes narrowed. His gaze swept over the table, noting the little details. The nervous fidgeting of the Deputy Minister of Security, the way the Minister of Agriculture kept glancing at his watch, the tension in the room that was palpable even beneath the pleasantries. Ibrahim's mind worked like a well-oiled machine, analyzing every movement, every word, as he searched for the one who might make a wrong move, the one who was about to betray him. The minutes seemed to stretch endlessly. The discussions about security, budget allocations, and foreign relations were nothing more than background noise to Ibrahim. He was locked onto the mission at hand: find the traitor, expose them, and survive this deadly game. Then, just as the discussion about military budgets began to drag on, Ibrahim's earpiece crackled. Siku's voice, calm but urgent, broke the silence in his ear. "Sir, we've pinpointed the source of the transmission. The spy is in the room." Ibrahim's heart skipped a beat. He had known it was only a matter of time before they would strike, but hearing it confirmed, hearing that there was a traitor right under his nose, sent a surge of adrenaline through his veins. He had to act fast, but he also had to keep his calm. He couldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing him panic. He continued the meeting as though nothing was amiss, his gaze flickering to the Minister of Defense, who sat across from him, his eyes a little too steady, his posture a little too composed. Ibrahim knew that the man sitting before him was no longer the ally he had once trusted. He was now a target. But Ibrahim had to wait. He had to make sure he had the evidence, the proof that would bring this conspiracy to light. Tonight, the stakes were higher than they had ever been. As the conversation flowed, Ibrahim's mind was far from the words being exchanged. Every sound, every shift in posture, every accidental glance became significant to him. His eyes were fixed on the Minister of Defense, the very man whose voice had haunted him earlier. Ibrahim's suspicions were confirmed when, just as the minister leaned forward, a slight movement caught his eye. His hand brushed against the cuff of his jacket, and Ibrahim saw it. Something small, almost imperceptible but unmistakable. A faint red light blinked from inside the jacket's pocket, signaling a hidden transmitter. A wave of realization washed over Ibrahim. The spy was here. The very man who had sworn an oath to protect him was now actively working against him. He couldn't afford to make a scene. His only option was to play it cool, to keep everything moving forward while his guards quietly sprang into action. "Sir, we've identified the transmitter," Siku's voice crackled in Ibrahim's earpiece. "It's coming from the Minister of Defense's jacket. We have confirmation." Ibrahim nodded imperceptibly, trying to keep his demeanor calm as his mind worked through the next steps. He couldn't let the others in the room know that he knew. He couldn't let the traitor realize that his plan had been exposed. The timing had to be perfect. "Gentlemen," Ibrahim said, his voice steady, forcing a smile as he addressed the room. "I've been thinking about our security policies lately. Perhaps we should discuss how we can improve coordination between the military and the police. There are always new challenges." The ministers nodded, some murmuring in agreement, others too focused on their own concerns. Ibrahim's eyes never left the Minister of Defense. As the conversation continued, Ibrahim's mind raced. He needed to bring this to a close, but he couldn't do it in front of the traitor. He needed a plan, one that would trap them all in the act, one that would expose them for who they truly were. Just as the conversation about military strategies reached a lull, Ibrahim turned to the group. "Gentlemen, I'd like to address an issue that has been weighing on my mind. A matter of national importance. There's something we need to discuss, something that affects the very security of our country." The room went silent. Ibrahim took a deep breath. It was time to put his plan into motion. As the meeting wore on, Ibrahim's mind never strayed far from Ismail, the boy who had unknowingly saved his life. He couldn't afford to forget about him, not when the stakes were so high. The boy had heard the plot, recorded the evidence, and brought it to him. Without Ismail, Ibrahim might have never known about the assassination attempt until it was too late. But now, Ismail was at the palace, waiting in the guest room, unaware of the danger lurking around him. Ibrahim had given strict instructions to keep Ismail safe, to protect him at all costs. But the president's mind was uneasy. He knew the enemy was closing in. If the traitors were as organized as he suspected, they would be making their move soon. And Ismail, the key to everything, was a target. A cold dread settled in Ibrahim's chest as he left the council room and made his way to the guest wing. His footsteps quickened, the sound of his shoes echoing in the empty hallways. He had to get to Ismail. The boy was in more danger than he realized. When Ibrahim reached the guest room, his worst fears were realized. The door to the room was wide open, and there was no sign of Ismail. The bed was undisturbed, the curtains fluttering slightly in the breeze from the open window. But the worst part, there was a small spot of blood on the floor. Ibrahim's heart dropped to his stomach. His mind raced as he called for his guards. "Where is the boy?" he demanded, his voice sharp with panic. The guards scrambled through the room, checking every corner, every shadow, but it was too late. Ismail was gone. The realization hit Ibrahim like a ton of bricks. The traitors had taken the boy. They knew the value of the evidence Ismail held. They couldn't let him live. He had to be silenced before he could reveal the truth. Ibrahim clenched his fists, his mind reeling. This was no longer just about his survival. The boy had become part of a bigger game, and now, Ibrahim had to act fast to save him. "Find him," Ibrahim shouted to his guards. "Seal every exit. Search the entire palace." His voice was filled with urgency as he raced down the hall, determination driving him forward. He couldn't afford to lose Ismail, not now, not when the boy had risked everything to save him. The entire palace was in chaos. Ibrahim's mind was a storm of thoughts and fears as he rushed through the corridors, his heart pounding in his chest. Ismail, the boy who had unwittingly become a hero, was missing. He had risked everything to expose a deadly plot, and now he had been taken. Ibrahim couldn't lose him. Not after everything he had done. The minutes felt like hours as Ibrahim barked orders to his security detail, instructing them to lock down the entire palace. No one was to leave or enter. The hunt for Ismail had begun. Ibrahim's mind raced, piecing together the possibilities. If the traitors were involved in the kidnapping, then they had the boy for one reason: to silence him before he could expose the truth. But Ibrahim wouldn't let that happen. He couldn't. The tension was thick as Ibrahim, flanked by his trusted guards, made his way through the hallways of the palace. Every footstep felt heavy, every corner felt like it held a new threat. The palace, once a symbol of power and safety, now felt like a labyrinth of betrayal. Ibrahim knew that time was running out. Ismail had the proof, and without him, the coup would succeed. But Ibrahim would stop at nothing to ensure the boy's safety. Finally, as Ibrahim reached the guest room, his worst fears were confirmed. The door stood wide open, the room eerily quiet. The first thing that caught his attention was the small, ominous spot of blood on the floor. His stomach dropped. His mind screamed at him to move faster. Where was Ismail? Had they already silenced him? Was he even alive? Ibrahim stood frozen, his eyes scanning the room for any sign of the boy. The room was empty, save for the faint traces of struggle. His guards rushed in, checking under the bed, behind the curtains, but it was clear, Ismail was gone. Panic surged through Ibrahim's veins. He had to find him. He couldn't let the boy's sacrifice go in vain. "Find him," Ibrahim shouted, his voice shaking with urgency. "Seal all exits. No one gets out of this palace." His mind was racing now. Who had taken him? The traitors, of course. But could they have made it this far into the palace without someone noticing? And then it hit him. Someone on the inside had to be helping them. A guard, a servant, someone close enough to know where Ismail was being kept. His chest tightened with frustration. The thought of the boy being alone in the hands of the conspirators filled him with dread. But Ibrahim's determination burned brighter than ever. He couldn't afford to lose Ismail. Not now. Not when the boy had risked everything for him in the country. As the search continued, Ibrahim couldn't shake the feeling that the clock was ticking. He had to act quickly, and he had to be smart. The next move would be crucial. If the traitors had Ismail, they would use him to try to force Ibrahim's hand. But Ibrahim wouldn't give in. He couldn't. This battle wasn't just about his survival. It was about protecting the truth, the country, and the innocent lives caught in the crossfire. What an intense journey it's been. From the suspenseful discovery of a plot against President Ibrahim Traoré to the incredible bravery of a young street boy, Ismail, who saved a nation from within. This story is one of courage, betrayal, and justice, where the power of one voice made a difference. But the adventure doesn't end here. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more thrilling stories like this. We love hearing your thoughts, so leave a comment below and let us know what you think about Ibrahim's story and the incredible role Ismail played in saving the nation. Backhand index pointing right, share this story with your friends, and let's spread the power of truth and bravery together. Subscribe, comment, and share. Let's continue the journey.